It's okay if you get stressed out by big, difficult jazz chords. Imagine that you're playing a song and then one of the chords looks like this. Your brain is overloading and the next one looks just the same and they keep on coming all the time. We can't all be like B.B. King and just ask to hire somebody to play chords and then go,
I'm horrible with chords.
Now, and the main reason for that is that you'll actually have a lot of fun playing chords and you can make some great music with them. You just need to know how. In this video, I'm going to go over dealing with complicated chords and how they shouldn't really be a problem. And instead, you want to work towards making it easier to deal with chord progressions. It shouldn't be complicated to play music, just like Joe Pass says.
The object in playing guitar, solo, melody is to make music and not to make hard work.
When you look at a chord symbol like C7, sharp 11, flat 9, then that's a lot of information and you don't want to spend too much energy on analyzing that while you're also trying to play music. Just imagine how difficult it is figuring out what those notes are in the middle of a song. You also don't want to try to remember some grip that you've learned in a book that will work for a C7, sharp 11, flat 9. It even takes long to say it. But then maybe that chord is far away from the G minor 7 that you were coming from and it doesn't really fit with where the music is or where it's going. So the trick is that you can actually also just ignore all of that and just play a C7. Especially if you're a beginner, then that's probably the best way to go about it. But you do need to play the right type of simple C7, as I'll show you. And later in the video, I'm also going to show you how to be much more strategic and flexible with the chords, instead of getting stuck with a lot of numbers and letters, because numbers and letters are not music. Just play the basic chord. So a minor 7 with a 9 and 11, it will still work if you just play a minor 7 chord. And a dominant works if you play it without the extensions as well. Start by just playing the simple harmony, as Joe Pass says.
You must look at chord changes really in the simplest way you can look at them.
But you have to play the right types of simple chords. And in the beginning, if you just ignore all the extensions and alterations, what you want to do is to play the chords as shell voicings. And as you probably already know, then a shell voicing is a voicing with just a root, a third, and a seventh. It's very basic, but it also still really describes the core sound of the chord. And it doesn't clash with any flat 9s, sharp 11s, or 13s that might also be in the music. For a 2-5-1, then maybe the sheet music will say, but you can start with just playing the simple shell voicing version of this, which would be. And here I'm just leaving out all the other notes, and then that's what's left. And there's another version of the shell voicings which is located down here that you also want to be aware of. I have other videos that go into shell voicings in more detail, and I'll link to some of those in the description of this video. But I think in this video, it's more important that we help you make it less stressful to play songs, to learn music, and to use jazz chords. So that's what I'm gonna focus on. Now, this is really a solid solution. With shell voicings, you can pretty much play any progression and get it to sound right. And you can also be rhythmical because they sort of have two layers built into them. And when you play them like this, you can also really hear how the chords move, so you still get the essential flow of the harmony. But it's important that you remember that in jazz, the chords are not isolated islands. They are a part of a chord progression, and you want to think of them as words and not get stuck spelling the letters and not focus on how the chords flow together and how they fit together, which is the next thing you need to look at. When you're reading chords and start to analyze the extensions and alterations, then you're thinking about something that isn't music. It's numbers and letters, and in the moment, it's not helping you play any better. Now, I came across this interview with the great jazz guitarist Joe DiOrio, where he talks about asking Wes about this. And Wes's answer is so spot on.
So I asked him, Wes, when you think of D minor G7C, or when you see it, what do you think? He said, man, it's a sound. Man, it's a sound. It's not a symbol, you understand? It's not a scale, it's a sound.
The first question that I think of when I hear Wes's answer is, how do you turn chords into sounds? And for most people, I think the easiest way to do that is to connect the chords to songs. So learning how they sound in one song that you know really well, and then using that to hear the chords in the next song. And you do that not by thinking of a single chord, but by learning to recognize the building blocks that make up the song. Think of a minor 2-5-1. So here's one in Beautiful Love. And of course, you have one of those in Autumn Leaves as well. And it's also in What Is This Thing Called Love. Thinking in chunks of chords is incredibly practical, and is also why there are 2 billion lessons on 2-5-1 progressions, because the 2-5-1 is just the most common building block for jazz songs. But it's far from the only one, and actually there should probably be more lessons on all the other ones as well. Let me give you a more practical example of how this really helps you deal with complicated chord symbols in a more musical way. Let's say that the music you're reading says D7, flat 9, flat 13. If you only look at the chord, then that's all the information that you have. But if you ignore the extensions and then just zoom out a bit and see that it's a part of, for instance, a minor 2-5-1, so A half diminished to D7 to G minor 6, then you have a way of playing it where you are not worrying about playing a specific chord, but you are more working on playing a passage in the music that has melody and rhythm, not numbers and symbols. Because instead of trying to calculate what the flat 13 of D is and how to play that, then you're playing a D7 that's resolving to G minor. Adding that context to a chord is much closer to a sound and a lot easier to hear. The important takeaway here is that you start to look at songs as having chunks that are smaller chord progressions, and also recognize how they're similar and when something sounds similar. It does take time to build a vocabulary of chord progressions and get them into your ear, but it's definitely worth it. And then you know what you can do with a chord, what notes you can add and which melodies might work. You need that because jazz is about improvising, also when it comes to chords. One of the things that I really love about playing jazz is that soloing and playing chords is really pretty much the same thing. You're taking the chords and then you're improvising to turn them into music. In one case, you're creating a melody or a solo, and in the other, you're creating a background for somebody else's melody. One of the problems here is that a chord symbol is just this static thing. Check out how this example uses a flat 9 and a flat 13, but those notes are not there all the time. So you want to try to see a chord symbol not as a single grip or a few different grips that you picked up in a book. If it says D7 flat 9, you don't have to play the flat 9. And you can often add a flat 13 in there. It will sound great because those two notes are both a part of the sound of that chord, whether they're written in the chord symbol or not. It is incredibly important that you don't get stuck in details and complicated calculations while you're also trying to play music. But this is not only true for playing chords, it's also true for soloing. And here it's important that you not only learn what notes to play, but also how you make those into music, something that really sounds like jazz. Otherwise, your solos are just not going to work at all. Now, if you want to see a good place to get started with this and some of the skills that you need to develop to be able to do this, then check out this video, which starts very simple and step by step introduces you to different ways of creating some solid jazz lines with basic material.